Okay, so now we're to the updates setup, and this obviously is very important because it allows you to, it basically sets up the update script that will insert data from your station to the database. There are several options to do that. So you can use the weather display software, you can use Cumulus, Media Bridge, Weather Underground, Custom Text File, WeatherCat, Mode. So just in case you were interested in how that caching and logging works, you can read it here, but it's not really essential. Before I move on, I want to explain what a cron job is. People often struggle with the concept of a cron job, but it's actually quite simple once you know how PHP works. And so in case you know what a cron job is, you can well, just listen, but it's not that important because if you understand it, it's actually quite easy. Okay, so the way PHP works is if you have a script, that script has certain commands, and those commands tell the computer or your server what to do. Now, to run that, if you run that script, it means I execute it. If I enter a script in a browser, like this one, for example, it's a PHP script, this page. If I refresh that, okay, now I've executed that script, and it did what it was supposed to do. So we have this update script in the template, which includes instructions how to take data from whatever source you specified here, process it, in other words, check that the numbers are okay, calculate some of the variables like dew point, and then save it to your database. Now, what you could do, theoretically of course, is every 5 minutes, or even more often, depends what interval you use, simply hit the refresh button or enter that site, that update script, and run it. And it will update your database, or it would save it to cache. That doesn't really matter. But the point is, you obviously don't want to do this. You don't want to sit there 24/7 and updating your database. You probably have better things to do. And so for that, we use a cron job. So cron job is basically, think about it like a bot, like a robot that, for a cron job, you always specify two parameters. One, that's the URL. That's the location of the script. And that's the location of the script that this cron job will then execute. And then the next thing is the time. And this time can be given as, for example, every Wednesday at 5 o'clock, or it can be an interval, which is what we're going to use for the template. So we, for example, say, okay, every 1 minute, run the URL that I specified, and it will do that. So that's how we can do this automatically. We don't have to sit there and update our database manually. We simply do it using a cron job. And there are basically three options how you can set up a cron job. So first option, and that's for those who are running their own servers. So if you have your own server, then you probably know what a cron job is, and in such case you simply use the server command line to set up a cron job. If you don't have your own server, then next option is, if you're using an external web hosting, it's very likely that your provider will have cron jobs available. And in such case, you should go to your web hosting control panel, not media template control panel, web hosting control panel. And in that web hosting control panel, you should look for something called cron, like this, C-R-O-N, and see if you can find it there. And then next thing you want to check is, if your provider offers this, you also want to check what is the minimum interval at which you can run these. Because I know that in case of some cheaper providers, the minimum interval might be, for example, 1 hour. And that unfortunately would be useless for our purposes, because you obviously want your database to be updated more often than once per hour. So I would say that the ideal would be a minute. If minute is not available, then check if 5 minutes is available. If nothing is available, that would be 5 minutes or less. Then we will use the third option, or in case your provider does not provide cron jobs at all, there are I found these two, but you might find others. There are these sites which offer cron jobs for free. Obviously the problem here is that even though I've had very good experience with this one and it's been very reliable, obviously you're not guaranteed that it will always work, and it can just stop working any day. So that's why if you can use any of the other options I mentioned, go for that. If not, then this is an option. So later on I will show you where you will get that URL to use, but for now let's just go to this site, and when I open it, this is what it looks like. And so we would click sign up. You create a free profile, you will get an activation email that you will confirm, and once you have that, you can basically set up a cron job, and I will show you how to do that, but we'll get to that later. So this was just to explain to you what a cron job is, and that this is absolutely essential unless you really want to sit there and every 5 minutes or even every 1 minute hit the F5 button to refresh your site and update your database. So in the next video I will show you how to set up the updates in the template, because that's what we have to do first. First we have to tell the template what sort of source we want to use. And one last thing I want to say is that one exception to what I said is MediaBridge. If you are using MediaBridge, or actually I think even Weather Display, but I'm not using Weather Display, so I'm not 100% sure. But in case of MediaBridge, it uses a slightly different method, or rather, it has the cron job implemented in MediaBridge. It's built in there. So in that case, you don't need a cron job. MediaBridge will do it for you, and I will show you how to do that. So now we know what a cron job is, and now we'll set up the updates.